I'm going to actually allow some people to put up their hands, for those of you who prefer the old method. I think that Harish has got us off to a very good start. Thank you, Harish. I took down some more detailed notes, but the key words I heard were innovation, supply chain, and working with the partners in supply chain, his commitment to palm oil, and in a sense, to wrap it up, that working with partnership, there can be social change so that good companies really become great businesses. I think those are some of the things I really take to heart. I mentioned this particularly because the three other panelists are focused on the palm oil sector, and I'd like to begin by asking them to give us a few comments and take us from there. Perhaps I could just begin with the person on my right and then go around. So would you like to start off, Jeremy? Jeremy Gun from Wilmar, please.
Thank you, Simon. It's very, very good to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of our experiences and some of our challenges as well. With regards to specifically palm, because I think the topic centers around the issue of palm oil, which I think is controversial, is emotional for some people, and it's extremely relevant for the world and especially developing countries in terms of requirements for food going forward. Despite the many palm-related sustainability standards and certifications in the market, the oil palm sector continues to be embroiled in debates over deforestation, biodiversity loss, greenhouse gas emissions, and social conflicts. The global discourse has been emotionally charged, highly strained, and the different stakeholder groups have failed to create a constructive space for idea sharing, collaboration, and innovative problem solving. Although the RSPO, like you mentioned just now, the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, has made great strides to create a constructive dialogue, recent conflicts over definitions of no deforestation demonstrate the limitations of a sector-wide approach, relying heavily on consumer pull to create incentives for changing practices at the producer level. This has led to a polarization between the various interest groups, with the image of palm oil suffering the most as a result. There are many different palm-related certification schemes out there. You mentioned the RSPO. There's also the ISCC, which relates to biofuels use. On a more broad scale, you have the UNGC. You also have mandatory schemes, like in Indonesia, you have the ISPO, the Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil Scheme. All of these certifications have different standards, and they are based on different stakeholder groups coming up with their version of what they consider the most important things related towards sustainability for the palm oil sector. What we did, and all of this, there's lots of confusion in the market because there's so many different certification schemes, and different customers want different things. But what we did at the end of December last year, in December, was to announce our own policy with three main pillars of no deforestation, no peat development, and no exploitation. We didn't do this due to the pressure of NGOs, as some would have you believe. We did it because we saw the deterioration in the environment in many countries and changes in the global climate, and we felt that something needed to be done, and that big corporates have to take the lead and work together as never before. Consumers globally are also favoring and moving towards responsibly produced commodities. The industry therefore has to adapt itself to remain competitive, and I think that's an extremely important thing that the industry and other players that the space that we operate in have to realize and acknowledge. But having said that, sustainability is also a shared responsibility. The onus of sustainable development should not just be on businesses or on the shoulders of NGOs. The governments, consumers, and even financial communities such as banks and institutional investment funds also have a big part to play, as they also have a very big stake within the industry. You also, in the brief talk when we spoke, asked about some of the challenges that we were facing, and as early adopters and announcers of a policy which the industry as industry leaders as well. And I think, we have to acknowledge that palm oil chains, supply chains, are multi-tiered and extremely complex. And they are very difficult. It's very difficult to see the base of the pyramid at times. You have our business model for Wilmar especially, which is also downstream heavy and also very complex, making it even more challenging. Whilst companies have the ability sometimes to police their direct suppliers and even the tier beyond that, sometimes they find it difficult to see the base of their supply pyramid. Just as an illustration, Wilmar has more than 750 direct crude palm oil suppliers, both in Indonesia and Malaysia. And this figure doesn't even include the smallholders, agents, and brokers. And if you include that in it, the figure runs into several thousand. And many suppliers also would often refuse insight into their supply, as their customers may also be their competitors. Many suppliers are also unfamiliar with sustainability and sustainability requirements and the expectations of the ultimate consumer. And as mentioned previously, a lot of too many certification schemes in the market overwhelm many suppliers as well. And there are many different requirements from the various different customers, and sometimes even we are confused as to exactly which scheme they want. So that doesn't make it any more simple for us to actually perform our commitments to the policy. So our new policy, which was announced at the end of last year, it goes above and beyond the RSPO in two main ways. It addresses the issues which many of the NGOs have been campaigning for, especially the likes of some of the NGOs in the room, which I'm sure I'll get a chance to have a chat with later. No development on high carbon stock forest, which relates to the no deforestation element, and no development on peat regardless of depth. These are the two main elements which I believe that the RSPO doesn't adequately address today, or that is the perception that some of the stakeholder groups have you believe as well. With regards to the RSPO certification, we're already well down the road and on track with regards to our own certification. We have more than 75% of our own plantations already certified, and we expect to have all 100% of our operations certified by 2016. While we have a blanket policy on no peat and no high carbon stock development, with regards to smallholders and indigenous communities, we also recognize that they are a critical part of the industry and that they face very unique situations. We will be developing a program in conjunction with various different stakeholders to help local smallholders and farmers develop their native customary land. And we understand that indigenous communities also depend on this land for their livelihoods. We have also reached out to various government agencies to work together to look into the areas being proposed for palm development for local communities. We're also ready to offer assistance in the form of technical and financial support to help these farmers towards sustainable development. The case in point here, we've recently signed an MOU with a social NGO in East Malaysia to help independent smallholders towards RSPO certification. We've offered financial incentives once they've passed the risk assessment by complying with 8 key areas as outlined by the collaborating NGO, and we'll also support them by giving them technical advice in the form of best management practices, building capacity, integrated pest management, health and safety, and this is all done in conjunction with the various different stakeholders that we would be collaborating with. And we'll also be providing fertilizer, beneficial plants, and also help the coordination of the collection of their scheduled waste. I think it's important that industry, especially private sector, do their part in helping the smallholders and independent smallholders and farmers and indigenous communities, because they constitute such a large part of the palm oil industry. And without getting them on board on this road to sustainability, it becomes much more difficult for the industry as a whole to realize its journey towards sustainability. Perhaps I'd like to stop there, Simon.
Thank you, Jeremy. Before I go on to Pak Kamarudin from Sime Darby, perhaps as a non-expert, non-palm oil person, and some of you might be too, just want to mention some points and I've got it wrong, please, Jeremy, jump back in. First, I think Jeremy's mentioned the particular pledge not to develop on peat. Peatland, just to explain, is considered to be, by some, to be sort of very inhospitable to development because it will dry up, will catch fire more easily, and if it does, it will produce much more carbon per acre. So this is one reason, I think, perhaps, among others. The second part that perhaps I thought needed some explanation for non-experts is that Wilmer is both a very large producer, which is why Jeremy said that his plantations are largely certified already, 70%, 100% coming up soon. But Wilmer also is such a big palm oil trader that it buys in from other producers. And so that's why he mentioned the large number of direct suppliers, but below that, many more smallholders. And I think this is very important given Pa Agus's early comment about development with equity. And this is why I think the last part of Jeremy's presentation was about how Wilmer is making efforts on the ground to actually assist some of the smallholders in collaboration with some of the NGOs so that they have access to more technology and more finance. I hope that's put in context. Jeremy, if I got it more or less right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to Pak Kamarudin, who is the head of sustainability from Sime Darby from Malaysia. Pak Kamarudin, please.
Thank you, Professor Simon Tay, Chairman of SIIA, fellow panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to be here to share Sime Darby's experience with all present on palm oil, a sustainable solution for future needs. I would like to congratulate SIIA for the organization of this first dialogue, or inaugural dialogue on sustainable world resources. In the short time allocated, my discussions point will be as follows. To introduce Sime Darby, to share insights and efforts on sustainability, to discuss whether palm oil is a villain or a victim, Sime Darby's view of existing certification schemes, and the tipping point. Let me begin by saying that Sime Darby is an organization which is a multinational company, and I've spent working for it for 35 years as a scientist, a change management person, head of R&D, and now head of sustainability. If it is not for the aspiring tagline, developing sustainable futures, I would not have stayed for so long. At Sime Darby, we have 5 strategic sustainability goals. First, leveraging on sustainability to create value. Second, effectively managing sustainability risks. Third, developing sustainability thought leadership. Instill a performance culture. And finally, effective sustainability reporting. Our 5 goals drive our sustainability strategy across the group. The oil palm industry has always been an environmental friendly industry, or more simply, a green industry. Why am I saying this? Done well, or done sustainably, the palm oil industry has the potential for turning into an exceptionally environmental friendly, socially responsible and vibrant sector of a nation's economy. In the past, even before the buzzword sustainability came into being, the oil palm industry has been protecting the environment. There are many examples to support this claim, but what I just would like to indicate is one example: the zero burning technique of replanting. This is actually an innovative, non-polluting technique of replanting with many economic benefits developed by Sime Darby in 1985. Among the economic benefits are no fallow period, that is no gestation period, and the enhancing of soil fertility. The zero burning technique became Sime Darby's standard in 1989. Certainly it was introduced ahead of its time, before even the transboundary haze became a phenomenon. For introducing this innovative technology, Sime Darby was awarded the Global 500 Roll of Honor at the Earth Summit in 1992 at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Thus, it is not a surprise when it was adopted as the Malaysian standard in 1997 and made the Asian standard in 2003. Perhaps I should not dwell too much on achievements of oil palm industry so far, but enough to say it is, or it can be, a green industry, and now transforming into a fully sustainable industry. The creation of the RSPO in 2004 has contributed to this positive transformation and is certainly a strategic move, and has taken sustainability of oil palm industry to the next level. Sime Darby is glad to be one of the founding members of the RSPO and now to be the largest producer of certified sustainable palm oil in the world. Today, RSPO is the only credible and global standards for sustainable palm oil for the following reasons. RSPO is unique and credible, not-for-profit organization that is truly multi-stakeholder initiative. It represents 7 stakeholder groups which all have equal voice in the organization. RSPO operating model is based on decision-making by consensus, if we are talking about partnership. And RSPO is the only standard that compels its member to certify all their units. Or RSPO cannot certify only one flagship unit and leave others uncertified. On this basis, let's support the RSPO. Make it the norm rather than the niche. Our vertically integrated and fully segregated supply line. With market sentiment shifting towards full segregation, Sime Darby has established 2 fully segregated certified sustainable supply lines. The total capacity now is 355,000 tons per annum of fully segregated CSPO and palm products. There has always been gaps between supply and demand. What Sime Darby is doing is to narrow the gap. We hope that our commitment to fully segregated certified sustainable palm oil production will be translated into sales and benefits for us and all. This is synonymous with us being one of the founders of the RSPO and followed by commitment towards 100% CSPO certification. Now we are establishing the expressway for sustainable palm oil and palm product supply line. Is palm oil industry really bad? There has been escalating criticisms of palm oil industry over environmental and social impacts. Palm oil industry has been labeled as a villain, a forest and climate criminal, conflict palm oil, dying for a cookie, dirty secrets, etc. However, we also know that the industry had undeniably lifted millions of people out of poverty. The palm oil industry has proven to be a major driver of economic development in Malaysia and Indonesia, accounting for about 9% and 4.5% of the respective economic output. Or is it about addressing the impacts of agriculture as a whole, as mentioned by Mr. Varghese earlier of Olam International? The palm oil footprint is relatively small compared to other agricultural products. There are a total of 16.6 million hectares planted with oil palm globally. Oil palm accounted for only 0.3% of global area under agriculture. Oil palm accounted for only 1.1% of global cropland. The world today has 7 billion people. By 2050, there will be 9.3 billion. Growth of population is greatest in least developed countries, particularly in least developed nations. And currently, 1.4 billion people live on USD 1.25 a day, or less than 1.5 billion people in the world do not have access to electricity. 2.5 billion people do not have access to toilet, and almost 1 billion people go hungry every day. With an increase of 2.3 billion people, there will be 3.3 billion extra mouths to feed. FAO predicted 70% more food needs to be produced in order to ensure adequate food supplies for a world population expected to reach 9.3 billion by 2050. This puts things in perspective, and agriculture is under pressure. With an average yield of oil palm 4 to 6 times than other oilseed crop, it promises the potential of optimizing arable land. Palm oil has the potential to significantly contribute to food security. Oil palm accounts for only 5.5% of the total area cultivated under 10 major oilseeds. However, palm oil and palm kernel accounts for a significant 32% of global production of the 17 major oils and fat. Considering the shrinking land resource, oil palm is part of the solution to food security, as each piece of land will have to become more food. The oil palm industry provides significant rural employment. Over 446,000 people in Malaysia employed in oil palm estates in 2012. It is estimated 3.2 million people in Indonesia were employed in oil palm plantation in 2011. In Liberia, Sime Darby currently employs 3,000 people with the potential to create more jobs. The industry also provides extensive training which builds on human capital in rural areas. Smallholder program contribute to community development. The national poverty line in Malaysia is around USD 200. The income of independent oil palm smallholders average around USD 400. Felda settlers' annual income has improved from around USD 400 to an excess USD 800. Palm oil programs have significantly contributed to poverty eradication in Malaysia. Globally, about 3 million smallholder heads are involved in this sector. A sustainable palm oil industry contributes to national and local economic development while balancing traditional needs and environmental protection. The tipping point. The RSPO is a multi-stakeholder initiative that aims to promote growth and use of sustainable palm oil. The RSPO provides a robust framework to maintain sustainable practices and provide comfort to users of palm oil on sustainability claims, i.e., via independent certification audit. This is indeed a significant difference between supply and demand, and my recommendation is growers have demonstrated their commitment to production of sustainable palm oil. Consumer markets are lagging behind in the uptake of CPO. Despite call for certified sustainable oil, actual remains weak. Support the RSPO uptake of certified sustainable palm oil. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Can I move on to our third panelist, Mr. John Hartman from Cargill, please?
Thank you very much, Professor Simon. It's an honor to be with you today and be part of this panel. I've got 2 points that I want to get across. I have 2 points that I want to get across to the group today. The first is that sustainability goes beyond environment. It's about improving people's lives. The second point is sustainability efforts will fail without stakeholder collaboration. So I'll expand on those 2 points. Mr. Harish did a very nice job of describing some of the history of Unilever. Cargill has a similar history with regards to the time that we've been in business. We've been in business for 150 years, nearly 150. Next year will be 150 years. We operate in 67 different countries and operate many different supply chains. This concept of improving people's lives is core to our values and has gone back many, many decades in the business. Cargill's stated purpose today is to be a global leader in nourishing people. When we talk about nourishing people, it's beyond the food nourishment, but the nourishment that goes beyond that, enriching their lives, finding ways to improve standard of living in different parts of the world. I believe these are all part and parcel of both the need for sustainability and also the solution on how to achieve sustainability. We also talk about our role in creating and building responsible supply chains. A responsible supply chain we've defined as one in which we can provide safe, affordable, nutritious food while protecting the environment and protecting people. For Cargill's perspective, I'll touch on a few examples of these supply chain initiatives, but it's core to our business. Okay? I want to speak a little bit about RSPO in advance and to kind of build on some of the points that were already made here in the panel. I want to talk about Cargill's journey, let's say pre-RSPO. Sustainability, at the end of the day, requires it to become part of the values and beliefs and the culture and the essence of your corporation. We have to be able to get to that point. And so as we look at trying to encourage other organizations to participate, we have to build in the culture. And that takes, depending on where different companies are at in their journey, you have to help them come along on this issue of culture. You see that the critics of the palm oil industry approach it from one side. There's also positive avenues to get to building these cultures. I reflect these issues of values and beliefs as Cargill's starting point in RSPO. We joined RSPO not because of some pressure from the outside, but because we truly feel that it was an important initiative. Now about RSPO. RSPO has not been getting good press recently, and I believe that it's a critical institution and organization for the success of sustainability in palm oil. There are many very, very good principles, criteria, and indicators for the operations that are practical, that can be interpreted and deployed into the business. It covers from employee health and safety issues, transparency in the community, how do you interact with the local communities, gets into issues of good agricultural practices, also the need for continuous improvement. The area where the critique is at is in the new development portion of it. And as Jeremy had mentioned, there's some places for some improvement. The areas where we believe also that as Cargill we've committed to also to the no deforestation, so that's a commitment to preserving high carbon stock areas. There are some concerns yet about the definitions of high carbon stock, and so work needs to be done in that area. But we believe firmly that that's an area that we can improve on as members of RSPO, and as well as getting other people to participate. The next area is peat development. Just a few weeks ago, we rejected a potential expansion opportunity on land that had shallow peat. We have committed to no development on peat. There's good reasons for that. It's related to the impact on the environment, the release of carbon as those peat areas are being drained. So we believe that's also an improvement area from RSPO. As Cargill, we're committed to that. And in the third area that is also critical, and I'll basically spend the rest of my time on that, and that's the social economic part of it, to make sure that we are bringing along and supporting the society around us in the areas that we're operating. So I'll touch on a few examples that are outside of the palm supply chain that Cargill does. I want to speak a bit from the bottom up because so far much of the discussion has been kind of institutional and top-down. We have a sustainable corn project in China. There's a vital ecosystem in northeast Jilin province in China that has some leopards and tigers and cranes. Cargill went into a 5-year project starting in the year 2011 to use yield intensification with the farmers in that area. These farmers, it's a main corn growing area in China. They produce 16 million tons of corn, and so through an effort of yield intensification, the increase in yields has been 28%. So that's an example of decreasing land use pressure to protect the species there. Next example is, we call it breaking the cocoa survival cycle. It's working with cooperatives and farmers, primarily in the African Ivory Coast. We have impacted 110 cooperatives, 60,000 farmers, and the impact of that is doubling their income on the land that they have. And so that also moves towards the issue of poverty alleviation. The third area to talk about, we call it learning about sustainable palm. We have a teaching farm in Indonesia at the Institute Pertanian in Bogor. That teaching farm was set up to teach good agricultural practices and to expose the next generation of future leaders to palm sustainability efforts. We have a partnership in Malaysia with Wild Asia and Solidaridad to give technical assistance to smallholder farmers. It's to help them build up in a smallholder level to to achieve RSPO certification for independent smallholders. My second point that I want to make is the sustainability efforts will fail without stakeholder collaboration. I want to start with the issues of government. We had Pak August with us earlier talking about poverty alleviation, et cetera, the importance of palm oil. There are regulatory issues that we have to align. Not everything is aligned. However, palm oil is a critical industry in Indonesia and Malaysia and other countries where it's grown. We can work closely with the governments in a way that's positive to promote the brand and the benefits of palm oil. We have smallholders in our community. We must build and bring the smallholders community with us. I say that as a figure of speech and also literally. We've invited 2 guests that are with us today, Pak August and Pak Mubarak, who are smallholders from our own operations. We respect their contributions, and they have done a fantastic job of promoting sustainability in their community. We've got plantations and their employees. The plantations employ a huge number of people. Those employees have families. The sustainability efforts can be posed in a way that they get the benefit in their own lives and can pass it along throughout the community. And there's the downstream consumers and end users. Those are all important stakeholders in this process. Earlier, there were some comments made about the end consumers are unlikely to pay additional money for the benefit of sustainability. However, from a supply chain perspective, there are many advantages in adopting sustainability. If you're good in sustainability, you're likely going to be better also in yield, productivity, and the other elements that can drive profitable growth. The last comment I want to talk about is going forwards. Different organizations have different purposes and different reasons why they embrace sustainability. Some are from a perspective of brand innovation, some are from a perspective of protection, brand protection, some might be cost cutting. Whatever the motivation is, let's welcome them into the circle, if you will, get them involved in sustainability. Cargill has a responsible supply chain criteria, has been adopted from the globally accepted IFC performance standards. There's multiple categories that we work with our customers with to identify specific projects any place on the planet. Those categories are labor and working conditions, resource efficiency and pollution prevention, community health, safety and security, biodiversity conservation and sustainable management of living natural resources, indigenous peoples, cultural heritage, and voluntary resettlement. By working with our customers, we can identify areas that are critical to them for whatever their motivations are, and then take action on the ground in detail to make an impact someplace on the planet. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, John. I would like to start the question and answer session. But if I may, first, we have about 15 minutes to go. A number of questions come into the box already. If I may, I'd like to start by first asking Harish a few questions, because if you look at the structure of our panel discussion, Harish actually deals with not just palm oil, but a great number of products that Unilever buys in for its different products, commodities that it buys in for its products. And the other three have focused almost exclusively on palm oil. So if I could, Harish, first, there are substitutes for palm oil. And as they've acknowledged, palm oil has had bad press. And of course, they give us some reasons why things aren't that bad and things are getting better. What's Unilever's point of view? Why have you insisted on 100% certification? And the second question is, there is some debate about the different standards and certifications. What is Unilever's approach to looking at all the different, organizations that certify?
Yeah, I think, firstly, I was very pleased to hear most of the speakers here talk about the fact that we have a complete alignment actually on what we are trying to do in terms of palm oil. I didn't hear a different language, if I may be perfectly honest. Everyone talked about no deforestation. Everyone talked about no new development on peat. Everyone talked about no exploitation of people and communities. And frankly, the great starting point in any of these endeavors is to make sure that all stakeholders understand the common purpose. Equally, there is absolutely no doubt what you need, therefore, is a common platform on which you can build standards and make sure that the industry has a voice. And I think, again, I'm really pleased and delighted that at least two of you spoke about the role of the RSPO, which Unilever is fully committed to, the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, where both users, producers, and traders actually sit around one forum. Now, like in all these things, there will be areas of disagreement. I'm not concerned about that because, everyone's converging towards a common purpose. And if we can converge towards common standards, I think that will be a big leap. And lastly, I just want to, because the entire conversation has been about palm oil, I just want to bring it away from that to the general subject of sustainability and doing good business. I think at the end of the day, hopefully what you're getting from this entire group is the fact that everyone's committed to doing good business. Everyone recognizes that doing sustainable business is a non-negotiable. Making sure you're working with communities is non-negotiable. At the end of the day, we are also, I think, all converging on the fact that there are multiple dimensions to sustainability. It's not, environment is one very important aspect. And then there is the whole economic and social aspects of what business can mean. And I think we have to take a holistic approach of environment, social, and economic impact of what all of us are trying to do as a good business. So I must say that I was very pleased to hear my fellow members talk about what all of us are trying to do, and I don't see any divergence here.
Thank you. If there's nothing particular urgently you want to add, I'd just like to come to the questions. One of the questions relates to the idea of how these values of sustainability and in the vision and mission of your companies translates down. I mean, I think, like Harish, I've heard, and all of us have heard, quite a great deal of alignment. Some differences about the RSPO, but generally, all those elements that he talked about of concurrence are there. But the questioner asks us about how, when you have these embedded sustainability ideas in your vision and mission, how can this be translated on the ground? And another question, which I will relate to together, is about how you feel independent smallholders can really start to take this on board in the practical things they do. Would anyone like to respond to these questions, working this on the ground?
Maybe I would like basically to respond to the first question, yeah? In Sime Darby, as an example that is, we have actually a vision, which is developing sustainable futures. And this vision actually is translated down because we have actually quite a lot of committees. We have the Sustainability Committee of the board, then we have actually the Management Sustainability Committee, and then we have the Divisional Sustainability Committee. So basically whatever directions that's set at the top is actually taken down right to the lower level. And of course, the RSPO certifications really help. As you can recollect, we are one of the founders of the RSPO, and we at that time have actually stated that we want to go for 100% certification. And I would like to mention here right now, 97% of our strategic operating units, that is the mill and several estates, one strategic operating unit that is, 97% have been certified. So basically when you go for certification, you will do a lot of trainings. You will do a lot of engagement with the workers. So basically, that's how we embed sustainability. But I must also say here, sustainability is a journey. We will never reach there. And looking at it, we are on the right journey. And of course, as time goes, the bar will be raised. And certainly, we will hope that we will be able to meet the challenge. That's on the first question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Simon, if I may, the question about the independent smallholders, I think that's a very, very good question, because if you look at the actual dynamics of it versus the associated smallholders, for example, where we are actually obliged and responsible to bring them along on the sustainability journey. I think for the independent smallholders, they are, as by definition, independent. And for many of them, the issue of sustainability doesn't really come into their psyche, their thinking. They're more concerned about making sure they have food on the table for their families. So in our experience, what we've actually tried to have to do is to provide a financial incentive. I think that's probably the only way you can get them to make that first jump. With regards to building capacity, helping them on integrated pest management techniques, giving them fertilizer, for example, providing all of this capacity building plus a financial incentive. That's probably the only way to actually get them on board. Once they're on board, I think many of them could be convinced that this could be the way to go because they might find it more efficient, for example. But to expect them to place the onus on them to actually come forward and be part of this journey, I think that's going to be slightly difficult, especially you're dealing with the dynamics of many smallholders and farmers in developing countries. That they just don't think like that.
John, would you like to contribute on this question?
Sure. I'd like to express some comments about our smallholders that are part of our business. We've got 14,000 smallholders, and they're RSPO certified as well. And I want to talk a bit about the motivation behind them becoming RSPO certified. 2 of them are in the room today, if you want to speak with them later. When we embraced this concept of certification, sustainability and certification within our business, they were witnesses to what we were doing within our business. We improved our operations by engaging in this. As was mentioned, there's many things that get addressed in implementing RSPO. They wanted to be part of it. They didn't ask for premiums. They didn't ask for financial incentives. They wanted to be part of it because they wanted to improve their operation. They felt that this concept of being good members in their community was an important part of it. They were seeking ways to support not only their own families and their own business, but their neighbors around the community. And they successfully put it together. Now, having it together now, as a company, we market their sustainability certificates separately. We share the premiums with them so they get some financial benefits. They have used those premiums to help educate their organization. Just in a matter of a couple of weeks ago, they brought a group here to Singapore to just look around and see around. In the past, they've been to Malaysia and looked at the industry in Malaysia. So this is a group of smallholders that 20 years ago would have been at the lower end of the poverty chain, have struggled to get themselves established, and now they're leaders in their community and serve as good examples for other smallholders throughout Indonesia.
Thank you, John. Just one detailed question on that. In terms of being RSPO certified and sharing the profits with them, what sort of margin of profits can they expect more, given that they're certified?
It becomes quite a nominal number on a per ton basis. Because we do market those smallholder certificates individually, organizations will favor those certificates because it goes to the smallholders. As a group, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so it represents for them opportunity to do things. As individuals, if we took it and divided it by 14,000 people, it's not so much on an individual basis. But the smallholder groups have committed to using this money for the benefit of the groups, and so therefore it has an impact on the group.
Please, go ahead, Harish.
Again, just to take this away from palm oil and give other examples which are equally relevant. Take tea, for example. Under the World Economic Forum agenda, there is a program called the New Vision for Agriculture. And what that does is to see if we can create partnerships between governments, corporates, and work towards the public-private partnership and smallholder farmers. One of the projects in this, and there are several, by the way, which we are working with the government of Vietnam, is a project on tea. And the whole idea here was to work with smallholder farmers to see if they can raise the quality of tea that is being produced in Vietnam to a level which is grade 4 and above, which allows Vietnam to export tea. Because the current quality that is being produced by smallholder farmers is not up to that quality. And the government is working with Unilever to see how we can train the smallholder farmers, and the incentive they have is if they can raise that level, we are actually guaranteeing up to 25,000 tons of tea that we will buy off them if they can raise it to a level of a grade 4. What that does, by the way, for Unilever is to get an alternative source. Number 2, this is direct sourcing, so their incomes are going up for sure. And number 3, there is a market that's being provided to them outside of Vietnam. This is just one example. We are not the only ones doing this. We are doing tea. There are others who are working with other governments to do this. I think these are excellent examples of how public-private partnerships are helping to work with smallholder farmers to raise the general standards of living across the world.
Can I get questions to the floor? And as you prepare that, can I ask Harish one follow-up question? Harish, you have the beauty of looking across different commodities. And you've given the example of tea as opposed to palm oil you produce. How would you say the potential for palm oil to get better? I mean, obviously, the vision is being embedded. There's been criticism. Comparing it to other commodities, is there much more room for palm oil to be, take a leap forward, to be much innovative, to drive down the value, to get more sustainable?
I think I heard a lot of passion from people who are in this industry to see how we can move towards a more sustainable industry. I think if you ask me, the real issue is that it's a speed at which we want to change. And I know that there are many stakeholders, NGOs and so on, who would wish to see this moving faster. I think the journey has to be a commitment which is there. Number two, a set of standards which are beginning to form. And it's not that the train has stopped while the standards are forming. There are some points of disagreement, but there is a large points of agreement. I think then it's a question of how fast you can move in this journey. So I think, quite frankly, I can't add anything more to it than I think what my colleagues have actually talked about.
A question from the floor, please. Anyone? I can't hardly see because of the... hand over there, number 3, please.
Hi, thank you for your presentations and your talk. My name is Janice. I'm a postdoctoral researcher from ETH Zurich. A lot of things have been mentioned about encouraging and engaging with stakeholders. And I'm interested to know, especially with regards to independent smallholders, I'm sure that each of these companies have mills that take in all these palm oil from these independent smallholders. So I'm interested to what extent do these companies monitor their supply of palm oil from these independent smallholders. And also in the rural landscapes, we have other stakeholders such as the oil palm mill agents who supply these palm oil from independent smallholders to the mills, and also the medium level investors who own about 100 to 1,000 hectares of oil palm. And to what extent do these large companies also engage with these other stakeholders in the landscape? Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Janice, you asked the question on the pigeonhole as well. Go ahead, please. Anyone?
Thank you for the question. I think when we announced our policy, one of the key things that we had to do was to do engagement with all of these various different stakeholder groups. And as you rightly pointed out, it's a lot less clear to actually map out the relationships between the agents, the brokers, the very, very small, farmers and the very, very small companies that own, 50, 100 hectares, for example. And of course, the independent mills which take, fresh fruit bunches from all of these various different areas. But as part of our traceability exercise, it's very important that we also are able to map all of this out to be able to make sure that we know exactly where all of our palm oil comes from. But it is a challenge because of the way that the industry is actually set up. It's one thing to actually buy from big companies where you know exactly what's going on, you know their practices, for example, but to get visibility on some of these smaller players and the complexities within the supply chain at this level is challenging and is something which we're going to have to deal with over the next few months and years.
Gentlemen, I think we're out of time, but I want to follow up one question and put it to both the other two panelists. Harish mentioned it, and I think a number of questions the pigeonhole have answered. And what this is, when can this happen? I mean, we are very happy to hear that the vision of sustainability is now much more held by palm oil companies. You feel your reality is much better than the press you're getting. When will it be possible in this very complex, long supply chain for us to really see, or for you yourselves to feel that, the vision is starting to be embedded, starting to really take hold of this whole industry? And secondly, Indonesia and Malaysia, in that order, are the world's biggest two producers. Are there differences between the two? And Cameroon, particularly, Simon Darby operates in both. What is the experience? These are some of the questions I've digested from the pigeonhole.
I'll start with the when part of it. It's already happening. There's been major efforts in the industry to improve its practices. Now, the debate, again, is in time. There's some that are reluctant participants. There's some that are maybe confused or learning, trying to figure out what sustainability means. But there's been enormous efforts across the industry to move forwards. And RSPO is a good example of that. When you look at the percent of the palm oil that's produced that is now under RSPO and RSPO certified, let's say the uptake in the industry has been very rapid if you compare to other commodity sustainability efforts. And so it is underway. How do we accelerate it is maybe another question. I think some of the actions in managing the supply chain is a mechanism to try to accelerate or to encourage organizations to come into line. But I would say that it's already in action.
Cameron, when and maybe perhaps somewhere?
Actually, if you look at the RSPO statistics, if you were to compare with the other roundtables, actually the progress of the RSPO statistics is actually very much better. Within 3 to 5 years, they have actually achieved the percentage of 16% in terms of CSPO globally. So no other roundtable actually is at that level. The question right now is, when do we bring in the 84%? So this is where we are actually at the tipping point. And I'm very confident that done well in partnerships along the value chain, this could be achieved faster than what we'd expect. That's one. With regard to the smallholders, for Siam Dhabi, we only have about 10% of smallholders in Indonesia and 5% in Malaysia. Because essentially, Siam Dhabi is a grower since the beginning, since the early 1900s, so we are a grower. But what is actually very important is we have a time-bound plan for the smallholders in Indonesia and Malaysia. That is, we want to get certification by 2014 to 2020. Full certification from 2014 to, but we are already ahead of time. In the case of Indonesia, where the whole smallholder scheme is more plasma or the KKPR, they call it, already right now 60% have been certified as of now. So that's well ahead of time.
16 or 60?
60. 60. Whereas the one for Malaysia, we have two types of smallholders. One is the associated plantations, the small plantations, and the other one is actually independent smallholders. The one with the associated smallholders and independent, we are trying to provide incentive by basically paying for the certification costs. And right now, the progress is good with the associated plantation, and with the independent smallholders, we are now bringing in Wild Asia to help us to see how we can accelerate the process as well. Thank you.
Any last words, gentlemen? If not, please join me in thanking the panel for what I thought was a very detailed discussion.
Thank you once again, panelists, as well as our moderator, Professor Tay. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will break for lunch. If tea break was any indication, lunch will be very